Ready. Play.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into what everyone wants us to talk about, which is this controversy that seems to have happened between Norrie and Jarry, which, to be honest, I don't fully understand. And I'm speaking honestly. I'm not trying to be a neutral host here. I genuinely don't understand what happened, what's going on. Jack, can you enlighten us and give your thoughts on it?
I think it's important to look at what's happening or what is being accused in a holistic sense. So I will say in isolation, it doesn't really seem like that big an issue. Cam Norrie bouncing the ball for a little bit longer on his second serve. I am actually hedging. I think I'm siding with Jarry a little bit here. And it's only because Jarry's track record's pretty clean. I've never heard him really complaining about anybody, and I have heard people complaining about Cam. So I actually am inclined to slightly believe Jarry. I don't think it's born of nothing. Cam does have a little bit of a checkered history with some gamesmanship stuff, and fair play to him. He takes it all very competitively, and he doesn't really, I'm saying he's got, in inverted commas, a checkered history of gamesmanship. It's really nothing that big, but he does seem like he doesn't give two shits if he's friends with the person on the other side of the net at the end of the match. I think he just tries to win, and that's that. And again, you got to applaud him. It's very college tennis. You know what I mean? As great as it gets. But maybe Jarry does have a point. I just don't really know why he would bring it up if there wasn't something there. And I think Jarry seems like a really nice guy. So I'm inclined to believe him somewhat. That's my thoughts.
Interesting because the chat has identified Jarry as a habitual ball bouncing repeat offender. Ghosty kind of lighting him up a little bit there. And so, yeah, I still don't really understand it. I think, I don't want to make everything about college tennis, but gamesmanship and the crowd getting into it and being loud and obnoxious and the extra ball bounces and calling your own lines sometimes are very much part of the culture. So I think that is consistent with the tennis environment in which he came up, that he might, engage in those kind of things a little bit. And he's got the crowd on his side, and also, can you really blame him? If you get the match point, you're still in the court 2 hours later. Yeah, you're going to do everything that you can to win. And so I believe Jarry as well. I just don't actually feel bad for him. And I think that I can't get mad at Norrie for doing it.
Yeah, I'm the same, Zach. I really don't think it's that big an issue. I don't know if there actually is any controversy, even if it's true. But maybe he is telling the truth.
But also, I love tennis. I love these players. They could be a little bit dramatic. They have, from time to time. And I think, did he break any rules? No. Is that in question? No. So what are we talking about here? Get over it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's more about, there are some people who don't like people doing gamesmanship or just basically not being clean sports. There's still that attitude in tennis, even though one of my favorite stories from the bygone era of tennis is that I think I've told the story on a stream before, was that Fred Perry back in the 1930s once deliberately turned his pockets inside out to put his rival Gottfried von Cram off, because von Cram was a stickler for neatness, and seeing the inside out pockets drove him crazy, irritated him like mad. So let's not pretend that this hasn't been part of tennis for almost since the beginning. Zach is loving that story.
It used to be so much worse as well, obviously. Nowadays everybody's soft.
When was OCD discovered and identified? Because that Fred Perry story feels like an early instance of being like, that guy might have something going on with it. You can't see your opponent's pockets inside out. In what other sport would that be a distraction or cause angst in your opponents?
Clearly it bothered. I mean, by the way, Gottfried von Cram won the French Open twice. So this is not some guy who let it get to him a lot. But there we go.
That's the deepest cut reference that I've heard you make yet, Nick. The Gottfried von Cram 2-time French Open champion reference. Well, just beautiful stuff there.
Oh yeah. By the way, okay. So I want to do a bit of opportunity to have a bit of fun with this conversation. Which, let's face it, we talked about this. I think Jarry has played it down a little bit in his comments. I wasn't trying to make it a big thing in front of everybody. He wasn't trying to big thing in front of everybody, but obviously people noticed. I'll go to you, Zach, first, because obviously we love talking about your exploits on the court, but I'd love to hear your perspective as well, Jack. Any stories you have as well, Jack, afterwards. Have you ever played a prolific ball bouncer? And if not, what is the craziest bit of gamesmanship you've ever encountered on a tennis court?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. I mean, a couple dozen times, I think. So I've played prolific ball bouncers. I've played bad line callers. I've played people that just slice and dice. I've played people that change rackets, between games, but not during changeovers. And so those are all kind of part of the game. I actually don't mind any of the gamesmanship stuff other than calling the ball out when it's in. And I think that the classic American junior, when you get to call your own lines thing, is if somebody hits a lob and it's going to be close, you take a line to run that lob down where you put yourself between the ball and your opponent so they can't really see whether it's in or out, which makes it easier to make a bad call. That to me is the most egregious gamesmanship, but at least it takes a little bit of skill. The ball bouncing, literally anybody can do that. You just bounce the ball a bunch of times. I think that all this stuff is part of the game, though, right? Because yes, they're making you sit there and think a little bit while you do it, but they're also sitting there alone with their thoughts on a tennis court too. And a lot of times the gamesmanship, in my experience, it kind of backfires on people. There is a certain personality type that they seem to really lean in and like that kind of thing, but they're pretty few and far between. Jack, I don't know if that's been your experience as well, but what do you think?
I've never had to. I actually am reading Colin Island's book at the moment, and it's kind of opening a lot of doors for me in terms of what college tennis is like, and that came up. I can't remember exactly what he called it, where somebody covers the line so that then you can kind of get away with calling it out. And it's not something that is actually that prolific in Scotland. I think I've never come across anybody that's that bad a line caller. One of the worst I had though was this guy who genuinely 100% took 1.5 minutes, I think, to serve sometimes. So no ball bounces, literally just pause maybe for 10 seconds and then the motion starts and then nothing really happens for a little bit and then the motion kind of continues and eventually it came up and of course he would miss and go to the second serve, the whole thing would start again. And quite often it was a double fault. And for me, I don't mind waiting 5 minutes if you're going to double fault me. I'm just that's great. That's a free point. So honestly, kind of like Zach, none of it really bothers me. You can kind of just get on with your game. It's cool. It's fine. The only thing that really bothers me is the bad line calls.
Can I admit one?
Yeah, go on.
I the worst that I have ever personally done. I played a 3-set match a while back, and in North Carolina where I live, it gets really, really hot in the summer. This is a July match. It was probably 35, 36 C, super humid as well. And I started cramping up at the tail end of the second set, and I took an 8-9 minute kit change and just ripping hydration tablets and Gatorades and all that stuff to try and pickle juice to try and get back into it, and absolutely took some liberties with the time. I felt bad about that one because I actually did manage to pull that one out, but that's it's rec tennis. We're not getting paid. The pros, they can't let that kind of thing happen. At the rec level, you definitely can kind of push the envelope a little bit more. Nick, you're a player yourself. Have you experienced anything like what was alleged to have happened today?
Genuinely, no. Genuinely not. No, actually, most of the guys I play I've played over the years have been very fair, pretty nice. I've made some bad line calls, but not deliberately. And it's interesting that this is people's experience, and I don't know if it's as much of a thing in the UK. Maybe as Jack said, you get a guy who maybe takes a bit too long to serve sometimes, but that's about it. That's not really gamesmanship. That's probably just being bad.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, but I would say that there's also a difference between gamesmanship and cheating. Because in my mind, gamesmanship is pushing the limit, the spirit of the rules or the letter of the law. But technically, you're not gonna get defaulted for anything like that. Your opponent just might find it annoying. Versus what you're describing, which is trying to call something out when it landed in and get yourself a point. That is. I'm calling it for what it is. That is cheating.
Yeah.
That is very, very different. But yeah, nothing I've ever come across. And to be honest, I don't think that my opponents really needed to do anything like that against me, because I am a terrible tennis player and have lost way more matches than I've won. I think I've only recently broken a 2-year losing streak, and that was against a guy who started playing tennis 2 months ago. So I can't really.
A win is a win. Hey, put it on the board. A win's a win.
Oh yeah, win's a win, but it's not. I think the minute that my opponents get into a match with me, like, yeah, I don't need to do anything, just wait for him to miss.
That's tennis.
I wonder what nation has the most cheating, whether it's the UK or the US, and I wonder like where they perfect gamesmanship, because like there's an answer to a place where like gamesmanship is the most part of the tennis culture. I don't know where it is, but just we'll be noodling on that later on today.
If we have anyone here who's not from the US or the UK in the live chat, please tell us any stories. We'd love to hear more of those. Ghosty, you're a player. Maybe you can share some stories. Marcus, you've just missed all the chat about the spat. It was about a lot of ball bouncing. I'm going to do one last fun question whilst we're having fun with this topic, and then we'll move on to actually talk about the tennis. Who would you say is the worst for ball bouncing on the pro tour that you've seen? And please throw in a name that I don't mention, just in case I've forgotten one. Cam Norrie, Marin Cilic, or Novak Djokovic?
Oh, I'm gonna go Cilic. But so Djokovic and Cilic, it's different because they're from a different time. They spent a decade without that clock, able to bounce to their heart's content, and so like they came up in a different era. It is part of them more deeply than it is for Norrie, I think. So I think I'm going to stick with Cilic. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, Novak for me, but maybe the actual answer is Marin, but I think Novak, he ramps up those bounces when the going gets a bit tighter, and it does start to seep into the realm of heady gamesmanship sometimes when he's really under pressure and whatever. It worked for him, obviously. He's the best player ever, so it's kind of hard to argue with it, right?
Yeah, I would go with Cilic just because I think he is the one I most often go, is he actually going to serve? Whereas I've never really done that with Norrie, and Djokovic, I do notice it, as you say, but he's usually in the tight moments.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.